Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to another OpenNTF webinar. My name is Niklas Seidloff. I'm the chair of OpenNTF's technical committee, and I'm the host today. We have a very exciting topic, the new OpenNTF project, Bootstrap for XPages. The author of this project and today's speaker is known by everyone in the XPages community, Philippe Riand. Phil had been the technical lead for the IBM XPages development team since the very beginning. Recently, he expanded his role and is now the IBM Collaboration Solutions AppDev lead architect, which also includes AppDev for IBM Connections and IBM Smart Cloud. Since this is a live webinar, you will be able to ask questions that Phil will answer at the end. Just type your questions into the e-meeting, or if you have dialed into the conference call, you can ask your questions yourselves. And now let's get started with the actual webinar. Bootstrap is a very popular open source front-end framework to build web-based applications. I think one of its main strengths is the built-in support for responsive websites. Phil will now demonstrate how he has wrapped this powerful functionality in another XPages extension library so that the Bootstrap look and feel can easily be used in custom XPages applications. And now let me hand over to Phil. Phil, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Niklas. So, as Niklas said, the topic of today is Bootstrap for XPages, which is a project that actually went to OpenNTF last month. So, to really make it clear about what this presentation is about, the idea is really to introduce this new project called Bootstrap for XPages. And it's to show you how you can consume the project in your own applications whenever there are existing apps or new XPages applications. And it also shows how you can tailor, how you can customize this library for your own needs. What it's not a tutorial for Bootstrap, because you can find many on the web that are deeply explaining how Bootstrap is working. And some of the people in the community also did that already with XPages in mind. And it's not a tutorial on how to build a Java extension library. Same thing, you have many tutorials already on the net. So here I'm leveraging this capability, but I'm assuming that you have at least some knowledge about it. So the prerequisites are, we're targeting XPages developers. So you should have some XPages development experience, particularly using an external library, like the extension library. You need to have some Java and eventually some XPages/JSF development skills to really understand what is happening under the hood here. And if you have some Bootstrap knowledge, it's even better because you can understand exactly what we're doing with Bootstrap. So that said, this presentation is actually split into three main buckets. The first one is an introduction to Bootstrap for XPages. The second one is how to consume Bootstrap for XPages. And the third one is how to contribute to Bootstrap for XPages. So what is Bootstrap? You might have heard about that because it is really very popular right now in the web development application world. So basically, it's a set of user interface elements that are available to web applications. And these elements are made of CSS files. So when you use Bootstrap, automatically your application will get a look and feel, which is the Bootstrap look and feel, for every HTML tag that you put in your page, for example, an edit box, a menu, and so forth. It has also, as Niklas pointed out, some particularly advanced layout and grid components that you can consume in your application and that you can use to provide a responsive design to your application. And responsive design is a way for you to design your page once and to get this page being resized properly and having a good viewing experience across all devices and across all different sizes for the media display here. And it also features some JavaScript components. So some HTML with behaviors. For example, you have tab controls, you have dialog boxes, etc. And for this, it uses actually jQuery. So you'll see that Bootstrap for XPages is delivered with jQuery. It's, again, very, very, very popular. And the good thing when it's so popular is you can find a lot of information, but you can find also a lot of extensions to Bootstrap. And Bootstrap, the main goal is to really empower front-end developers to quick start projects very efficiently and effectively. So if you're a web developer and you're just in front of your white page and you want to start an application, if you use Bootstrap, automatically you'll get a lot out of it, and your application will look professionally without having to do much in the application itself. And Bootstrap have been done by our friends in Twitter, and it's available on GitHub, and you have a link here, which is getbootstrap.com. So why bringing Bootstrap to XPages? Of course, the first and obvious reason is we want to take advantage of Bootstrap. We want you to write a very sleek application using XPages. So reusing Bootstrap and all these UI elements, really helps for building very nice XPages apps. Also, because it has a built-in responsive design and support for responsive design, we want you to be able to leverage that in XPages. If you know collaboration today that is currently hosted by OpenNTF with all the news for what is happening in the IBM collaboration world, you'll see that this application is an XPages application using Bootstrap. It was done, by hand. I mean, they're not using this library because the library was not available at this time, but it shows you what you can do with Bootstrap for XPages. And with this new library, you can write these kind of applications easily. So we want also you to be able to consume all the add-ons that are available on top of Bootstrap. And we want to provide you an alternate rendering that is ready to use for XPages application. Right now, XPages is coming with One UI, which is a great user interface that is used by most of, or let's say all the products that we have in ICS. But we want to give you something that is alternate in case you want to have a different look and feel, or in case some of the customers are asking for it. And I'm seeing customers asking for it because there is actually a high demand from the community. And I know that many XPages projects that are currently in production are using Bootstrap. They're built on top of Bootstrap. And as a result, in the community, we started several parallel efforts to make Bootstrap easier to consume in XPages. So one of the ideas behind this project is to say, instead of duplicating effort in the different projects, let's start with one project and let's have everybody contributing to the same, and let's share as much as we can, and let's consume Bootstrap the more easily we can. So the objective of the project here, of course, is to bring Bootstrap to an XPages application, but with minimum work, ideally none. You know that in XPages, we have a concept, which is called a theme. So the idea is select the theme that is called Bootstrap, and you should be ready to go. Of course, if you need some more customization of your application, or if your application, if it's an existing one and you use some hard-coded styles, you will have to change that. But if your application is just using the common controls we have in XPages, including the extension library, then just select the theme and it will work. The second objective is we want to provide the resources, so the CSS files and the JavaScript files, to be served by the core XPages runtime. So there is no need for you to add these files inside the NSF in order to consume Bootstrap. But once you have the library being deployed every NSF, every application can take advantage of them, and they're served globally. Also, in XPages, since I believe 8.5.2, we have these nice resources aggregators of the CSS and the JS files are aggregated for better performance. And what is currently added to the Bootstrap XPages project also participates into this file aggregation mechanism. So the idea is you have nothing to do and it performs well. And as I said, we want to cover all the common components we have in XPages. So all the core and extension library, including the Dojo controls, because we know that some of you are directly or indirectly using some Dojo controls, and we want the Dojo controls to pick up this Bootstrap look and feel. Also, Bootstrap is evolving very quickly. You'll see that the version we are currently delivering with Bootstrap for XPages is 2.3.1, and they just released actually 3.0. So we want the library to support multiple versions of Bootstrap. And you'll see how we do that, but we have multiple themes that are versioned. And this is for really future content. We want to provide new Bootstrap-specific components that are not currently covered by either the core or the extension library components. The other objective of this project is to drive a community around it. As I said, many projects started in the wild about creating some Bootstrap components, adding Bootstrap to XPages. So really, we want to drag a community here, and both a community of consumers. So you just have to get the project and use Bootstrap, but also a community of contributors. And we want to do all of that to make really XPages applications shining in the web. So let me first give you a quick demo of what it looks like. So this is the XPages extension library demo. This NSF file is currently delivered as part of the extension library on OpenNTF, so which is a different open source project. And the XPages extension library has been designed to support one UI. And what Bootstrap for XPages does here is that it brings the Bootstrap look and feel to this demo database. And the only thing I had to do, almost, was to select a new theme, and now you can see that the page is really featuring the Bootstrap look and feel. So first of all, we have the application layout. The application layout is comprising a set of elements like the place bar, like a tab, like some action buttons, footer that you can see at the bottom, and all of this is properly rendered when using the Bootstrap theme. And if I resize the page, because the theme that I selected is Bootstrap responsive, you can see that now the application is using a responsive layout. So when I'm resizing my page, automatically the different components are realigned and replaced, even stacked inside the UI. And I had to do nothing in my application to get this behavior automatically. So if I'm rendering this application on a mobile device, it will run it better. And there are a few things that we can enhance in this library, like what Collaboration Today has done, which is about collapsing the menus into buttons. And this is part of a future extension that will come. But again, from an application developer standpoint, you will have nothing to do more than just selecting the Bootstrap theme. So everything here renders properly. You can see the menu, and it's using the Bootstrap menu. So the look and feel is completely the Bootstrap look and feel, and more than that, the JavaScript code that is executing behind the scene is actually jQuery and Bootstrap here. All the controls are implemented. You can see, for example, the accordion that is here using the Dojo control, but the Dojo control that looks like a Bootstrap control. You can see the toolbar, and something interesting in the toolbar is that the icons are actually the icons provided by Bootstrap. Bootstrap is delivered with a library called glyph icons, and you can see the different icons here being rendered and consumed by the buttons. We have also dialogues. So if I click here on Edit Model, you can see a dialog that looks like a Bootstrap dialog, and the button bar, which is a Bootstrap button bar. The only thing I had to change actually in this application are the buttons to make them really look like Bootstrap, because the extension library was hard-coding some Lotus types here, so I just had to change that. But this will be fixed in the extension lib. You can see also tabs like this. So these tabs are the Bootstrap tabs. And you can see, the list containers. And more than that, all the core controls, like the view, are adapted to Bootstrap. So here's, the regular Nodes domino view. And now it's rendered as a Bootstrap view. So this is exactly the same component. You just drop it to the page, and you'll get this look and feel. The navigator as well is now featuring a Bootstrap look and feel, as well as all the other navigators like the expand navigator, or like the number of items per page navigator. And all the existing characteristics of the views and the different components are preserved. Here I can expand collapse. Same thing for the data view that is coming with the extension library. All right, so this is a quick overview of what we can do. And the main point is you have nothing to do, just select the theme, and you'll get Bootstrap for free. So let's come back to the slides. So what do we have today? So today we have the version 1.0 of Bootstrap for XPages that is available on OpenNTF. And I called it 1.0 because it covers all the controls that we have in core XPages in the extension library. It doesn't do more than that, but it does that, so this is 1.0. And the next releases will be about adding more capabilities on top of what already exists. Because it's an open source project on OpenNTF, it is distributed through the Apache 2.0 license, so you have access to the entire source code, and you can reuse it the way you want. You can make a copy of it if you want. You can change the code. You can copy the code into another project. This is under the Apache 2.0 license. The source code is available on GitHub. So if you're a core developer, you can go to GitHub and clone the project, which means make a local copy, create a fork so you can make your own changes to the project, and compile it and use it. If you're not a core developer and you want to consume the library, then you can go to OpenNTF and you will find a pre-compiled version of the library that is ready to install inside the Domino server and inside Domino Designer. With this version 1.0, we are distributing Bootstrap 2.3.1 and jQuery 1.8.2, and all the associated libraries that we need here, namely dbootstrap and Dojo Bootstrap. So dbootstrap is a theme, a Dojo theme that matches the Bootstrap look and feel, that makes your Dojo controls looking like native Bootstrap controls. And Dojo Bootstrap, we're not using that right now, but it's basically it's a replacement for the jQuery behaviors by Dojo behaviors. This is for future announcements if we want to the library. But they're just part of the library. They are cleared, from a legal standpoint, so you can consume them, as you want. And I got this question already a few times. The supported platform here is Nodes Domino 9. I haven't tried even on 8.5.3. I heard good and bad things, people succeeding, people failing. So it might work on 8.5.3 as long as you have the extension library or upgrade pack installed on your Domino server and Domino Designer. But this is not the goal of this library. The goal of this library, at least my goal, is to provide that on top of 9.0. But if you want to get that working on 8.5.3, feel free, and if you have a good experience, please share it. So, consuming Bootstrap for XPages. So the first thing to do is actually to get a copy of the project. And the easiest way to do that is to go to OpenNTF and to grab the precompiled version of the Bootstrap for XPages library and install that on both Domino Designer and the Domino Server. It's required to install it in Domino Designer because it has some specific components already that have to appear inside Domino Designer. It's not just a theme. There are more than just a theme. So in order to do that, you need to install that as an update site inside Domino Designer. I just put a link here with some detailed instructions on how to install an update site into Domino Designer. It takes just a few minutes to do it. And same thing on the Domino Server. The install procedure for the Domino Server is a bit different, and there are actually two main ways for doing that. The first one is by making a copy of the files inside the Domino Server file system, and the second one is to put that in an NSF update site and get the Domino Server pointing to this NSF update site using a note init parameter. So we have two nice set of instructions here, and I put the two links. Depending what you prefer, you can use one or the other. On my own project, depending on the machines, I use one or the other methods. But same thing, it should not take you more than a few minutes to get it installed. Then, once you have that installed, you have really two steps for enabling Bootstrap for XPages. The first one is about enabling the XPages libraries. So the Bootstrap for XPages library is a true XPages extension library, which means that in order to use its capabilities, you have to check the library in the application options. And also because this Bootstrap library relies on the extension library, you must have the extension library checked as well. So you go to the application options inside Domino Designer and you check these two libraries. Once this is done, in the same application options, you can then select a theme. And there are two themes that are available right now are Bootstrap v231 and Bootstrap v231R. So both are Bootstrap 2.3.1, as you can guess, but the second one with the R is what we call the responsive theme. And the responsive theme is adding an extra CSS to get the responsive behavior. So if I go back to my page, here you know, I'm just running the extension library. I go to Domino Designer. I go to the XSP properties. And now what I can do is that I can select, oh, sorry, I'm not in the right application, XPages extension library, this one. I can select One UI 2.1, for example. If I go to the application, go back to it, I can find it. Okay, I'm in the One UI look and feel. So really, it's not more difficult than selecting a theme in Domino Designer. All right, and you can find the different libraries in the page generation tab here and select the two libraries. Okay, I went back to the Bootstrap theme. Okay, this is it. So a few advices to the consumer here of this library. So first of all, avoid hard coding styles in your pages, but put these styles in a different CSS and try to set up the styles through a theme. And this is important if you want to switch between Bootstrap and One UI, as I just did previously. If your application doesn't have anything hard-coded, that will make the switch easier. The second thing is, even though you have some existing components and behaviors in Bootstrap, like a dialog, actually use this library with the extension library components instead of the just pre-canned component coming with Bootstrap. The reason is because XPages is a server-side framework generating markup, and every page has a particular life cycle in XPages. And the extension library components are managing this life cycle. And just a regular, for example, Bootstrap dialog doesn't. So you have to be very careful here. I mean, if you want to do just pure client-side application, then you can consume them. If you want to start to mix and match server-side behaviors and client-side behaviors, then use the extension library component. If you want to use this library in production, then get the build from OpenNTF rather than the source code from GitHub. This is exactly the same, except that the build that is currently on OpenNTF is optimized, which means that the Dojo, the JavaScript files, the CSS files are properly shrinked. And if you get just the source code from GitHub, then you have to build them by yourself, or you won't have the full optimum code running on your production server. So go to OpenNTF, get the pre-built version of the library, and you get the best performance. About building the library, we are currently thinking about putting a process. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we're thinking about making this process kind of public, the different tools we're using here, so you will be able to do the same build yourself. But right now, it's not public. So current limitations of this library. So this is 1.0, and it still has a couple of limitations. First of all, it doesn't fully matches all the IBM enterprise standards. You know that XPages is fully accessible, and we need that particularly to tackle, governments and public corporations here. But this one is not yet. And also the localization, the strings that are part of the library are limited to English right now. I mean, if you're willing to help and translate that to your own language, please feel free, and we can add, the different resources files into the library. So this is the first limitation about the enterprise standards. The second one is that it's consuming Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is great because it's providing a Dojo theme a Bootstrap Dojo theme. The problem is the way Bootstrap is being built. It's not using the same technology than Bootstrap or Dojo. It's using something different. And instead of consuming the styles from Bootstrap, it just recreates its own set of styles. So this is completely transparent, but the problem is when you're adding an add-on to Bootstrap, like a new theme on top of Bootstrap, then this won't be picked up by the Bootstrap. So this is currently the limitation of the Bootstrap. And some of the controls also that we're using in the extension library, like the dialog, it's still based on top of the Dojo control. So it works perfectly, but it works with the Bootstrap. In the future, we might want to rewrite these controls and have them taking full advantage of Bootstrap and jQuery instead of the Bootstrap. So currently, because they're built in Dojo, you might see some slight differences between the Bootstrap, the dialog, and the Bootstrap tooltips compared to their native Bootstrap, but they're really, really subtle. So now, third part, contributing to Bootstrap for XPages. So Bootstrap for XPages is a Java library for XPages. It's using the XPages extensibility API, which means that it's delivered as a set of plugins, features, and update sites. So if you want to contribute to the project and to the core library, then you have to install a Java development environment. Note that there are other ways to contribute to the project, like creating custom controls, leveraging, the Bootstrap capabilities bundled with the library, documentation, enablement. There are other ways, to contribute to the library. But if you want to contribute to the core code, then you have to install a development environment. So here is a set of, I would say, advices that I can give you on what to install. But again, your environment might look a little bit different. It's up to you to really define what you want to use. So what we're using ourselves here is, of course, Domino Designer and Domino Server 9 or Plus. Eclipse as the dev environment. I would recommend to use the latest one. So now it's actually 4.3, even though it says 4.2 here. eGit, which is a plugin that installs on top of Eclipse to connect to a Git repository, and particularly GitHub, where the source code resides right now. And you can see here a link to a video showing you how to install Eclipse when you want to create some add-ons to XPages, some kind of XPages library. There is also a very nice plugin that was developed by David Tayeb a few years ago that allows you to debug your code, your Domino server code, directly from Eclipse, and that prevents you from having to deploy it to Domino every time you do a change. I mean, this plugin is picking up all the changes directly from Eclipse into the Domino server. It's an OpenNTF project, so I put also another link here. Click there, download this project, installing in Eclipse, and you will have, the best developer experience for XPages. And then, you have to configure Eclipse with using the GRE 1.6, which is what is being used by the library, and also configure, Domino Designer as the target platform, because it's consuming some of the classes delivered with Nodes 9 and the extension libraries, so you have to use that in Eclipse to compile the library. If you're used to that, it takes you probably 5 to 10 minutes to set up. If you're not used, it might take a little bit longer, but in case you have any problem, we can help you on Stack Overflow or on the OpenNTF forums. Once you have done that, so then you have to install the code in Eclipse. And actually, the easiest way to do that is to get the code directly from GitHub. So what you have to do first is to fork the repository. I would advise you to fork the repository. I mean, it has no cost, and you have your own copy of the repository, so you can submit your changes. Because the one that I submitted is limited. I mean, you should not have access to it. You can just read it, right? So fork the repository so you have your own fork you can work on, and then clone it locally. So you can have, the source files locally. This is very easy to do with eGit. You can find a lot of tutorials on the web showing you how to do that directly from Eclipse. And once you have that, in the project, there are 3 projects that you want to add to your workspace. The first one is org OpenNTF XSP Bootstrap. This is actually the plugin containing all the code and all the resources. So this is where the thing happens, actually. Then there is another project, which is a feature. So a feature is an Eclipse capability for grouping plugins and defining a feature. So it's a kind of a shell here, and the shell is just pointing to the Bootstrap plugin. So it doesn't really have much inside. And then there is the update site that you can use to generate an update site directly from Eclipse. So you can right-click on the update site and say export, and then it will generate the update site that you can consume in Designer. Again, this update site is just pointing to the feature, and this is it. So there isn't much inside the last 2 plugins, the last 2 projects. The first one is the most important one because this is the plugin. If you look inside the plugin, you can find mostly 2 directories beyond, the other files like plugin.xml, meta-inf, whatever. The first one is src, which is containing all the Java source code for the project. It's containing a set of subdirectories. One is called components, And the components, this is actually a kind of a convention we use in the extension library. And the component is containing the Bootstrap specific components, so the JSF/XPages components. The render kit, which is containing the set of JSF renderers for all the core and the extension components. The config directory, which is containing all the configuration files, and then the theme directory containing all the theme files. We'll dive into that a little bit later. And then there is a second directory called resources. And this resources directory is containing all the JavaScript and CSS files served by the library. So it contains Bootstrap, it contains jQuery, it contains Dojo Bootstrap, and also some custom JavaScript files and CSS files that we put here to support Bootstrap in XPages. And you can see extlib inside the URL because it's using an extension point from the extension library itself for serving resources. If you use this extension point, it's suddenly, a lot easier to serve global resources and to add them automatically added into the code aggregator. I don't want to detail the extension point now. You can look at the source code, but it becomes very easy, and then you can access every resource that you have in this plugin using the URL ibm xsprs /extlib/bootstrap. All right, so everything you'll see in this directory can be served with this URL, and you have nothing else to do. So the Bootstrap theme, we actually added a new capability in 8.5.3, Node Domino 8.5.3, which is a way for contributing themes using extension points. And these extension points can contribute whole themes, and they can contribute also fragments. This is how the extension library, for example, contributes a fragment for its own set of components. So this library is using this new extension point and is providing a series of files. So the first one is bootstrap.theme, which is the main theme file. This is where we do all the association between the properties and the different components. Then we have the Bootstrap v231 theme, which is inheriting from the previous one, but it's adding the resources to load. What are the CSS and the JavaScript files to load? Same thing for the R theme, which is for the responsive one. And then we have the fragments for the extension library provided also as separate theme files. So you'll see that with this architecture, we can easily add, for example, Bootstrap v300.theme. It will still inherit from bootstrap.theme, but it will include all the 3.0 Bootstrap-specific resources. So how the theme is being used? So a theme file is used to define all the resources loaded by a page consuming the theme, which means that it defines the list of CSS files and JavaScript files to be loaded. So this is the first thing we're doing with the theme. The second thing is we are setting some component properties using a theme. Let's go back to the live application here. If I look at the view, you can see here that I have a collapsible icon and an icon to collapse and expand a row. This is using an image. If you look a little bit closer at the XPages control, you'll see that this particular component has two properties. One which is the collapsible icon, the other one is the expand icon. And the way the theme works is that it's setting this property pointing to the images. So if I go to the theme file, I look for the view. Here we are. So it's actually set to the column view, And to the column view, the theme says that the expanded image is this image. So you can see the URL of a globally served resource and pointing to the view underscore expanded.png. And same thing for the collapsed image. All right? So this is the first use of a theme, which is about setting up properties like this. Also, we're using a theme to add extra capabilities. If you look at Bootstrap, you'll see that there are a lot of different buttons. Submit button, cancel button, OK button. I don't remember all of them, right? So we use the theme for defining buttons that are matching, this Bootstrap concept. So if I go to, for example, the buttons, you can see here that I created something called button.info, right? And button.info, it sets the style class, to button-info. That are two styles coming from Bootstrap. If now I go to a page, so let me go to designer, I can go to a page, let's say new page, button. If I drag a button to the page, all right, I preview it. It's a regular button. If now I go to the properties of this button, go to the style, and say the theme is button.info, and save it. All right. Now you can see that the button changes look and feel, and it's a Bootstrap button.info. So the theme is really a way for defining easily specific component themes here, and then match what is provided by the Bootstrap library. And it's defined already for a set of components, and particularly the button, but we can probably expand it. But sometimes just setting properties is not sufficient. If you look at a component like the data view, it would need so many properties to get it customized and tailored for Bootstrap that is just impractical. So what the data view is doing is the data view is using a specific renderer, and the Bootstrap for XPages library is actually creating another copy of this renderer, but instead of rendering one UI styles, it's rendering Bootstrap style. So it's really more complex here because it requires a Java class to be created, and this Java class to be added to the project as a new renderer inside the RenderKit directory. So basically, every component inside JSF has a renderer, and the renderer is a kind of an external class just used for rendering a component. So the component has business behavior, right? And then the way it renders to a different, to a particular client, whenever it's a web client, a mobile client, is delegated to a renderer through what we call a RenderKit. This is where XPages extended also JSF. In JSF, if you want to contribute a different renderer to a component, you have to actually create your own RenderKit. And it's a bit painful. I mean, there's quite a lot of work to do to create a custom RenderKit. But in XPages, what we did is that we exposed a property called RenderType. And this property called RenderType just assigns a renderer to a component. So it's a property of a component and say, oh, now, outline.navigator, don't use your regular renderer, but use the one that is specified just here in the value property. So by doing that, and by setting that to the theme, we're setting a different renderers for all the components that are in need of a renderer for Bootstrap. And all the renderers are in one particular directory. They are even either written from scratch for some of them, or they are inheriting from existing renderers located either in the core XPages library or in the XPages extension library. So what you need to do when you want to write a renderer. So if you look at the XPages source code, and particularly the extension lib, you'll see that there are methods that you can use as a starting point. How to render an input control, how to render a table, how to render a view, how to render menus. We have all of this in the extension library. So if you want to create a new renderer for a Bootstrap component, start from one of these renderers and either make a copy of the source code or better, generate from it and just adapt its rendering to what you want to do here with Bootstrap. There are some utility classes also in the library. One of them is called Bootstrap Util. So it's a way for you to understand from an application, from a component standpoint, from a renderer, if first you're running the Bootstrap theme or not, and if so, what version of Bootstrap you're using. So you can take, you can adapt the rendering to the version of Bootstrap. There's also something called Bootstrap resources. And this is because we can have many versions of a library installed at the same time. But maybe in the future, one particular icon that is currently in Bootstrap 2.3.1 will be different in Bootstrap 3.0 or 4.0. The idea is to make your components independent from that. And the component is actually using this Bootstrap resources class to get access to these resources without knowing, their exact path. So it isolates the components from the different implementations of Bootstraps. So with that, you can have really one version of a component with its renderer and have multiple versions of Bootstraps, and then depending on the theme, it will point to the right resource. Something that is also interesting is a Bootstrap fragment. This is something that was initially in the extension library. We removed that. I kept it in the XPages bazaar, and I put that also in this Bootstrap library. The idea is to have an easy way for contributing extensions to the project. In Eclipse, you have the notion of a plugin, and you have a notion of a fragment. And the fragment is a set of resources, Java classes, other files that are adding themselves to a plugin. So a fragment is attached to a plugin, and it's adding its content as if it was initially in the plugin. To enable that, you have to get for security reasons, the plugin has to allow, external fragments to extend its capability. But once we have that set, then you have a very easy to use extension mechanism, and I'll show that in action in a second. And we have also the minifier, which is a class that you can use to shorten all the URLs that are being used by the code aggregator. So, as I said, if you want to extend Bootstrap for XPages yourself, you have mostly three ways for doing that. The first one is modifying the existing source code. Get it from GitHub, fork it, do your changes. But only do that if you're willing to contribute the code back to the project. If you don't want to contribute it back, then you'd better use another mechanism, because next time the Bootstrap for XPages project will evolve, you will have to resynchronize your code with all the changes that we're going to make. The second one is using a fragment to extend the existing plugin. It's really the simplest way for you for adding a new capability to Bootstrap for XPages. Just be careful about the name collision here. Make sure that what you're adding won't collide with another fragment or with something that is in the core plugin. So I would say just use your own namespace for all the Java packages, and you will be fine with that. And the third way is to create another library consuming Bootstrap for XPages and adding extensions. This way, you're completely isolated from the library, which is a very good thing, but you have to create a new library, and it's more difficult than just adding a fragment. So, let me show you how we can extend very easily Bootstrap for XPages. So I got a request, actually last week, about Docstrap. Docstrap is an extension to Bootstrap, and it's basically another CSS that you can add on top of the Bootstrap CSS, and automatically you get a nice dark theme, in your application. So my first answer was, I don't want this to be part of this library because this is just an extension, so it should be a different project. But I said, okay, let's see how difficult it will be to implement it, and then, to release the source code so it will be a good example for people. So it was actually very, very simple. If I go to my Eclipse environment, I just created a new project here, which is called bootstrap.docstrap. And this is a plugin fragment. And this plugin fragment is attaching itself to the Bootstrap main plugin. If I click to the fragment.xml, you can see that the host plugin is xsp.bootstrap. Then it's implementing an extension point, which is the StyleKit factory. So the StyleKit factory is the extension point for adding new themes. And then the code is really, really basic. It has a docstrap theme. If you look at that, it extends the Bootstrap theme. And the other thing it's doing, it's including the Bootstrap, files, and at the end, the docstrap, CSS file. And this is it. And, the docstrap CSS file is added in the resources directory here inside something called Bootstrap docstrap, and you can see, the minified version and just the regular version. So you can see it's just an extension libURL to get access to it. And this theme is named docstrap.theme, so now I can go back to Designer, go to my application properties, say docstrap, save it, and I think it was here, refresh the page, and automatically the theme is docstrap. So if this shows you two different things. First thing is, there are a lot of extensions and add-ons to Bootstrap that you can start to leverage. And if you want to package them as an extension to the Bootstrap for XPages project, that's also very easy. So I'm going to release this project. I don't know yet where and how, because it won't be part of the library. I want this to be an add-on. But there are some legal issues right now because it's on GitHub, it has no licenses, so different things. But I'm going to release it somewhere so you can have this as an example. All right, so building the project. As I said, right now, it's built on our own machines here. We cannot make the build process public because it's using some of the softwares that we cannot make available to right now. But we are working on a new build system using Maven and using everything public. So as soon as it will be available, then we'll put the build system on GitHub and maybe on OpenNTF, so you'll be able to build the project by yourself. So do your homework. If you want to start to play with the library and extend the library, there is a very nice extension that I haven't done that you guys can do. When you look at the application layout, the way Bootstrap is working, it's defining columns. And right now we're using 3 columns: the left column, the right column, and the middle, the body of the page. This is what the application layout is using. And in Bootstrap, you can specify the size of each of these columns. And right now, it's hard-coded in this project to, I said 2 units on the left, 2 units on the right, and 8 units in the middle. It would be great to add, 2 new properties to the application layout configuration object, but our left side and right side, so we can specify something different. So this is a good exercise, and it's really fairly easy, not difficult, if you want to get customized to this library and how to extend it. And then please help the project. I mean, you can create and contribute to OpenNTF, new plugin fragments like the docstrap one I just showed. You can encapsulate, Bootstrap theme, whatever you think about, adding custom controls, releasing some snippets in Next Snippets. There are many places where you can help. and extend the project. There are some ideas like extending the way we do responsive design, particularly by doing what Collaboration Today is doing, keeping up with the latest Bootstrap releases. Right now, we're working on putting 2.3.2 and 3.0 inside the library. I just got the legal approval to put that in the library, so it should come in the next couple of days. More difficult, replace the use of the Dojo controls by the corresponding Bootstrap components. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's a very good exercise if you want to understand how XPages is working, particularly with the component lifecycle. And create some really Bootstrap-specific components, so outside of what we currently have today, and why not, having some mobile UIs using jQuery, jQuery UI, and Bootstrap, as part of this library. These are just ideas, and you can come, of course, with all your new ideas. So for this project, I really want to thank a couple of people. First, Niklas, who is on the phone. So Niklas is, as ever, a great help when we try to release a new project. So for promoting the project, helping the project, testing the project, releasing videos, I think. Thank you, Niklas, for all your help. Peter Tanner, because you'll see that you saw that there are actually many open source software that are being bundled inside this project, which means that for IBM and OpenNTF, a lot of legal work to get it in, and Peter Tanner was really very helpful doing that, so thank you, Pete. And also the XPages community. I mean, there was a great interest, recently on Bootstrap in Bootstrap with XPages, right? And many projects have been started. So you can see here a couple of names. I might miss one, but I really want to thank you for bringing Bootstrap to XPages and getting people excited by Bootstrap, because this kind of led to this project, and I hope that this crew will also help Bootstrap for XPages and help to make it better. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. So whatever you want to ask, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Phil. This was an awesome presentation. For the people who have dialed into the conference call and want to ask questions, you need to unmute yourself using *6. So *6 to unmute yourself, and then you can ask your questions yourselves. There have been some questions in the chat during the e-meeting, and I promised people to bring them up. The first one that I don't think has been answered yet was from Vincent. His question was whether there are any client-side limitations, any browser-specific issues that we are aware of.
I'm not aware about any of them, but they might. And here, XPages for Bootstrap for XPages is actually consuming Bootstrap, so it has the limitations that Bootstrap has. I mean, it has a limitation we have currently in XPages in terms of supported browsers, because we have some controls, like the rich text editor, this kind of stuff. They have some limitations in terms of browsers. But beyond that, I mean, we are just dependent on Bootstrap. So it has the limits that Bootstrap has. No more, no less.
Okay, thank you. Next question was from Rakesh. His question was, do you know if all Xlib UI components have Bootstrap equivalents?
I don't fully get the question here. All the components that are currently in the extension library render properly now with Bootstrap, all of them, right? If they don't, is that there is a bug. But all of them are rendering, Bootstrap classes. I don't know if this is the question. If the question is, do we have some extension loop components like, let me think what we can have. Like the data view, and the data view as a Bootstrap equivalent? No, there is no data view in Bootstrap. But the data view component is consuming the Bootstrap styles to render.
Yeah, okay. There is a probably related question from Paul Withers. He's asking whether there will be any new components, mobile UI components, that might be added here. And his point is that it might make sense to leverage the work that Bootstrap has done in this area.
So I would say it's up to you guys. I do not plan by myself to add a lot more new components into this library. but I hope the community will help. So Bootstrap UI for mobile, Bootstrap mobile, I think it's a very good idea. If people in the community want to contribute, I mean, you're really welcome to do that. Honestly, this is not an IBM project, so this is not going to a particular product. It's really something that is an open source project. I won't spend a lot of time personally going forward on this project, but if we have people who want to contribute, please feel free.
Yeah, that answer actually leads into the next question, which is from Elijah. Is there a consideration in including these Bootstrap components in a point release of Domino?
I would say that right now the answer is no. I mean, the XPages team is of course aware about it. The XPages team is interested a lot by this, but there is no plan in getting that part of the product right now.
Okay. So Paul had a follow-up question, but I'm not sure I understand that one. Phil, do you want to take a look? Paul says, I'm thinking more in terms of mobile components for the core extension library, not necessarily just this project.
So if this is beyond this project, I would delegate that to really an XPages/Domino meeting, because there are some plans for XPages, in 901 and later, but there's nothing I can really tell about here.
Okay. So then there's another question from Xavier. His question is, using these Libs components, can we use the different styles Bootstrap offers to customize the display depending on screen width?
So, yes, if you look at Bootstrap, you can go to the Bootstrap website, and you can generate a custom version of Bootstrap. So, for example, by default, it's a gray, white, a gray look and feel. You can change these colors and put some other parameters and generate your own version of Bootstrap. Now, what I would do, and to get this integrated inside this library, is to do exactly what I did with the fragment. So it would be to create, your version of Bootstrap, your custom version of Bootstrap, wrap it into a fragment, and add the fragment on top of the library. That would make, the easiest developer experience for consuming custom Bootstrap files.
Yeah, and it may be related to that. When I created this video showing the Bootstrap framework in action, I wanted to have more than one column to wrap. Right, so I think in my example I had like 3 or 4 columns, and that's something that the Bootstrap extension library doesn't give you out of the box. But what I could simply do is to go to the Bootstrap documentation page, copy the tags and style names that I needed, and use them directly in the XSP markup, and that really helped me to use that functionality very easily, even though the extension library doesn't support it out of the box if you want.
So yes, and so there are two things here. So yeah, the extension library and the application layout components are right now rendering 3 columns, right? Or 1 or 2 or 3, but not more than 3. What you can do here is actually you can generate 1 column, and inside this column you can generate the same span that Bootstrap is using, and that works very well. So you can then define as many columns as you want, up to 12, which is the Bootstrap limitation. The second thing is, if you really want to dive into Java, you can actually create a custom version of the application layout renderer component. And then, by generating your own custom version of this, you can create as many columns as you want and provide them as facets to the component. And say, right now we have the left column, the right column, and the body content. So we have 2 facets and the tag content. What you can do is you can create a custom renderer and consume as many facets as you want. That's a little bit more difficult, but it's frankly doable. And because in this case it's just one renderer, it can be inside your NSF if you want. You don't even need to put that and to package it as a plugin.
Okay. And Howard has another question about back to the other Bootstrap styles, and he's asking whether someone can develop a tutorial showing how to do such a fragment.
So what I'll do is I'll put these fragments somewhere. I mean, as I said, the problem with Bootstrap is that it doesn't have any license. So Peter Tanner, I talked to Peter yesterday, he's connecting with the author of this Bootstrap library, and we are asking him to put a license file so then we can really refer to it from OpenNTF. So it might take a couple of days to get an answer. I don't know. We'll see. But when we'll get the answer, and if we can release that, then I will put this fragment somewhere on OpenNTF, probably as a new project, like Bootstrap for XPages extensions, something like this. And then, we can work on the tutorial, but, if somebody can help here, I would really appreciate it.
Okay. Sounds good. So last chance for questions. We are already a little bit over time, but I think this is a great discussion here. So last chance. Anyone? No. Okay. Well, you know how to reach us. There's the project on OpenNTF. We are on Twitter, etc., etc. I thank you all for attending this webinar. There will be another webinar beginning of next month. We will blog about it as soon as we have finalized the details. Again, thanks for attending today's webinar, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.